Once the Aeldari ruled the stars. They achieved mastery of time, space, and every other dimension. Now, they are a fractured people, brought low by their own hubris, and those that remain are scattered. The Asuriani of the Craftworlds, the Harlequins, who dwell within the labyrinthine webway, and the pirates and raiders who follow the path of the outcast. Yet despite their decline, the Aeldari vociferate against their fate. With great ferocity, skill, and foresight, haunted by sorrow, they battle tirelessly to preserve that which remains and to restore that which once was. As the fires of oblivion reach out from the great rift to engulf the galaxy, the dwindling and sorrowful Aeldari know in their hearts that the Rana Dandra approaches, and that each and every one of them must answer the call to war. Inquisition file reference 92,679/A/Y. Ordo, Xenos. File accept Xload. Classified. Inquisitor ID. Error. From the word of the Holy Inquisition. Many millennia ago, at the absolute height of its dominion, the Aeldari Empire stretched across the galaxy like a chain of living jewels, each world a radiant paradise suspended in the void. Their realms were places of effortless beauty, shaped and sustained by a civilization whose grasp of technology and psychic mastery granted them power that bordered on the divine. With such gifts, the Aeldari raised armies of staggering might, forces so rarely tested by defeat that even the memory of failure faded into irrelevance. The long war against the Necrontyr ended some 60 million Terran years before, and the subsequent eclipse of every rival species left the Aeldari without a true adversary. No power remained capable of challenging their supremacy. At the zenith of their ascendancy, there was no achievement beyond their reach, no frontier forbidden, no experiment too dangerous or too profane to attempt. The Aeldari knew no limits, for none remained to be imposed upon them. Their mastery of technology freed them from necessity itself. Entire worlds were engineered to feed, clothe, and sustain their people without labor or sacrifice. Released from toil, the Aeldari citizenry turned inward, devoting themselves wholly to the pursuit of desire, curiosity, and indulgence. Without the discipline of adversity to restrain them, ambition swelled unchecked. In time, they ceased to question the morality of their actions at all. Sensation became an end in itself, wonder a resource to be consumed without restraint. Thousands of worlds were given over entirely to the pursuit of pleasure, for this was the only realm the Aeldari had not yet mastered, and they would conquer it utterly. Across these paradise planets, the Aeldari pursued their every whim with abandon, indulging in dreams and curiosities that lesser minds could scarcely comprehend. Through their command of the webway, they could traverse nearly every corner of the galaxy, uncovering truths of the universe that have since been lost to time. In those days, death held little terror for them. After lives that spanned millennia, Aeldari souls drifted gently back into the immaterium, sheltered and guided by their gods, to be reborn anew. Conflict, though rare, had not vanished entirely. In the wake of the Necron Empire's collapse, countless younger species rose in defiance, seeking to challenge Aeldari rule. Each such attempt was crushed without hesitation or remorse. These victories served only to deepen the Aeldari's certainty in their own superiority. They knew themselves to be the rightful masters of the galaxy and saw no reason to doubt it. Their empire continued to flourish, unchallenged and unafraid, secure in the belief that no force could ever threaten their reign. Yet beneath this splendor, corruption took root. Many Aeldari surrendered fully to their most hedonistic impulses. Across the empire, exotic cults arose, devoted to limitless sensation, forbidden knowledge, and ever more extreme excess. Wrapped in hubris and intoxicated by their own perfection, the Aeldari failed to perceive the true nature of the danger they faced. it would not come in the form of invasion or conquest. Their doom would be born from within. Inquisitor's Log. Designation: Ordo Xenos. Subject: the Aeldari. The Asuyani, Aeldari, Exodites, all titles for a dying race. Accordingly, once a noble, mighty, and star-spanning people, laid low by hedonistic desire. There is some debate between Puritan and so-called radicals whether this Xenos differs from the others. Whilst it is clear that their cousins the Drukhari are monstrous savages that must be exterminated by the light of the Emperor, it has long been debated whether these forays and tenuous treatises at times with the Aeldari are wise. Undoubtedly, the Aeldari have wisdom, psychic might, and technologies of unparalleled wonder. But can we trust that the debasement of their peoples will not be repeated? I remain unclear on this matter, but as the scribes bring forth further material, one thing is clear: there are peoples that must not be taken lightly. Things shifted once more. Time had passed. The city no longer looked so clean and clear. The lights seemed dimmer. There were more shadows everywhere, but not because of catastrophe. It was because the people of the city wanted it this way. They wanted shadow now. They wanted quiet places where they could move apart and smoke their pipes and lie in each other's arms and pass their time most pleasantly. The priests in gold and purple and green moved among them, smiling approvingly, speaking their words of tolerance and comfort, encouraging the folk in their pursuit of pleasure. Life was sweet, and desires were to be embraced. Experience of any sort was good. I heard sermons preach that soon the bright golden God would appear and speak his word, and the universe would be transformed in the light of his presence. Listening to the words, I felt a sense of falseness and was disturbed. But I took another puff from the narcotic hookah and reached out for my lovers and found peace. More time passed. The people had turned their faces from the old gods and swarmed into the temples of the new God, who was yet to be born. Shrines lay neglected. Offerings went unmade. Life had altered strangely. People ignored their daily business now, lost themselves in sleep and the consumption of narcotics and hallucinogenic. Few people went about their business by day, but emerged only at night to revel and indulge in orgies of lovemaking and drug-taking and the consumption of hallucinogenic wine. The priests led the revels now and preached the word of the imminence of their God, and people watched and waited, sensing that soon the world would change forever. In the tunnels below, new statues were erected to the god. It was not like the friendly beings of old, and not everyone approved, for there were many that didn't take part in the revels. Other preachers appeared, saying that something was amiss, that some great disaster was imminent, and that soon there would be a cosmic crisis that would destroy Eldar civilization. Few paid attention. Sometimes those who spoke out were found beaten to death or overdosed on narcotics. Sometimes I saw priests in gold and purple and green standing over their corpses. Some took their families and belongings and left, taking flights to new planets or setting out for the great world ships. Some built a great vault, a safe place into which they could retreat within the webways. They began to experiment with devices that would tap the flows of power, let them restructure reality. Most stayed, too drugged to move, too overwhelmed by the pleasures of life to do anything other than take part in the day-long rituals in the temples of the new god. I sensed a mighty presence looming over everything, biding its time, waiting its moment. I was not alone in this. This sense of presence, of being at the end of something, gave the revels a desperate fury. People turned to darker pleasures. Blood flowed in the streets, and not all the victims of violence were unwilling participants. All sense of proportion, of restraint, departed. Now, day after day, night after night, passed to the beating of great drums, and dancing and revelry, to the sound of hellish, discordant piping. Eldar ran naked through the streets, bodies covered in tattoos written in blood or woven from scars. Sacrifices were made everywhere to the new god, as all vestige of sanity seemed to be extinguished. The priests in gold and purple and green cavorted lewdly in the streets, leading the revels, consuming the potions with the greatest enthusiasm, speaking mad words of revelation that eager-eared listeners drank in. The day of embodiment was fast approaching. The sermons grew even less restrained, ever more vehement. The priests led the population in ritual changing, in the defacing of the statues of the old gods, in the creation of newer and less wholesome idols. Under cover of night, things began to appear that looked like people, but whose limbs ended in claws. They danced in the moonlit streets, surrounded by clouds of intoxicating perfumes that drove all those who breathed them in to greater and greater heights of hedonism. No experience was ever enough. The Aeldari searched endlessly for new extremes through which to test the limits of sensation, emotion, and desire. What had once been curiosity curdled into obsession, and soon the final strands of the Empire's moral fabric began to unravel. Pleasure cults spread through Aeldari society, their rites growing ever more extreme, their adherents driven by compulsions they could neither satisfy nor abandon. Millions surrendered themselves to their darkest passions, and one by one, the glittering worlds of the Aeldari descended into anarchy. It was during this slow collapse that the first of those who would be known as the Exodites recognized the path their people were treading. Fearing the spiritual abyss opening before them, they fled the core worlds and settled upon distant, untamed planets, far from the epicenter of decadence. There, they embraced a harsh and disciplined existence, rejecting excess in favor of ritual, labor, and restraint, hoping to preserve what little purity remained within their souls. For those who stayed behind, the decline only deepened. Over centuries, indulgence gave way to atrocity. The streets of once idyllic cities ran red, stalked by killers and degenerates who preyed upon their own kind. Torture and murder became, to some, forms of artistic expression. The screams of the dying echoed through halls once devoted to beauty and contemplation, and cruelty was celebrated as enlightenment. The most debased among the Aeldari withdrew even further from restraint, carving out hidden sub-realms deep within the webway itself. There, beyond the reach of any remaining law or conscience, they indulged in sadistic excess without limit. As the horror escalated, more Aeldari attempted to flee. Vast world vessels, Craftworlds, were launched into the void, carrying those who still sought escape from damnation. Like the Exodites, these refugees were few, and they were scorned by those who remained behind, dismissed as weak, fearful, or obsolete. And so, over long centuries, the Aeldari Empire continued its slow and irreversible descent. Unseen and unheeded, the consequences of this degeneration began to echo beyond the material realm. The ceaseless extremes of pleasure and agony, the emotional peaks and troughs of an entire civilization, pulsed outward into the immaterium. There, where thought and emotion take form, such concentrated intensity did not fade. It accumulated. Passions layered upon passions, excess upon excess, until a presence began to stir. The corruption of the Aeldari was no longer merely cultural or spiritual. It was becoming something vast, conscious, and terrible. In their ignorance, the Aeldari had forged a mirror of themselves within the warp. From their raw emotions was born a nascent entity of godlike power, growing stronger with every indulgence, every atrocity, every scream of ecstasy or pain. It was a reflection of their pride and nobility, rendered grotesque by decadence and excess, a sentient embodiment of their moral collapse. Still oblivious, the Aeldari continued. Worlds burned, lives were taken without meaning or restraint. The great enemy they had created fed endlessly upon their corruption, swelling into the most perverse and twisted being the galaxy would ever know, Slaanesh, the chaos god of excess. To the Aeldari, this abomination would come to be known as She Who Thirsts. The moment of Slaanesh's apotheosis came with a psychic howl of unbound power, felt by every Aeldari as a blade tearing through their soul. Reality itself convulsed. A catastrophic psychic implosion ripped open the fabric of the universe, and the jewel-bright heart of the Aeldari Empire was torn from existence. In its place remained a roiling afterbirth of raw chaos energy, a wound in real space that expanded outward, consuming vast regions of the former empire. This scar upon the galaxy would be known forever as the Eye of Terror. In the immediate aftermath, billions of Aeldari and countless other beings were slain, their lifeless bodies scattered across worlds, thousands of light years from the Eye itself. Some exodite worlds lay too close to escape its reach. Craftworlds that had not travelled far enough were also consumed. As the catastrophe unfolded, Slaanesh gorged upon the souls of the dead, tearing them from their bodies and drawing them screaming into the warp. So many souls were devoured that the dark god became intoxicated upon them, yet never sated. From that moment onward, death held only horror for the Aeldari. No longer would their spirits fade gently into rebirth. Now, every fallen Aeldari faced eternal torment, their soul drawn inexorably towards She Who Thirsts. And Slaanesh will never cease in this hunger. Until the last Aeldari soul is consumed, the great enemy will not rest. To the average onlooker, the Aeldari superficially resemble humanity, but this is a vain and incompetent comparison. Within their physiology, psyche and souls, they are completely Xeno. Most Aeldari are taller than the average human, their limbs are longer, and their frames are leaner. They possess unexpected strength for this frame. They have striking and well-defined facial features. Aeldari oft have fair complexion, and their ears sculpted to a point. It is the eyes of the Aeldari that, of all their features, give window to their psychic might. They have a perforating quality that to many in the Imperium resembles the domesticated feline. Their senses are heightened even beyond that of all but the greatest human psychers experiencing ecstasy beyond compare. To the Aeldari, music, food, perfumes, beauty, and touch all carry elation that none of any other human or Xenos could understand. This is also true of the opposite, with disgust, revulsion, and distaste bringing an equal but opposite sensation. To see the Aeldari in motion is to witness a dance. Whether in their restful motion or in warfare, all Aeldari are graceful and elegant. All movement has a purpose, and all communication and etiquette carries as much weight in physical expression as with spoken word. In battle, Aeldari skill is without compare, a balance of martial prowess, poise, and dexterity. Physiologically, the homeostasis, neurologic, and muscular interlay of the Aeldari is as if expertly sculpted from clay. Their cardiovascular system exhibits higher heart rates with maintenance of appropriate pressures. Neurologically, they show both enhanced intellect, processing thoughts, possibilities, and emotions beyond that of even genius-level intellect for other races. These neurologic connections carry signals to their supple frames at lightning speed, allowing reflexes not seen in any others across the galaxy. Their immune, integumentary, and respiratory systems act with greater efficiency, less waste, and more efficient cellular turnover. Due to this, the Aeldari are almost unaffected by the process of aging. Their physical, psychic, and mental vigor remains almost the same across the passage of centuries or millennia. In this way, Aeldari most often find their end in battle, as without being killed in this manner, the Aeldari can exist almost indefinitely due to their impeccable physiology, enjoying indulgence, sensation, wonder, and spectacle without fear of illness, disease, or death. It is the psychic might of the Aeldari that is their defining advantage in the galaxy of the 41st and 42nd millennium. at the height of their power. The mightiest of the Aeldari were unmatched telepaths, telekinetic marvels, and could psychically disarm, maim, or kill a foe with a simple flourish. Even now, with the slow collapse of their race, they retain much of this prowess, and they still retain much of the technologies built upon this potency. Aeldari weapons and technology are grown from psychically active wraithbone, as well as other psycho-responsive materials, sculpted from pure psychic energies into their required form, and activated by an Aeldari psychic signature equivalent to an individualized key. For all their wonders of physiology, culture, and technology, the Aeldari carry an indelible flaw, which, if not managed, threaten to destroy what remains of their civilization. As Aeldari experience the exhilaration of battle, intellectual pursuit, physical exertion, and that of the paramour, they may experience transcendental bliss. It is the pursuit of an excess of this sensation that almost doomed their species with the arrival of She Who Thirsts. Thus, devoting their lives to moderation is critical to their ongoing survival. Consequently, any failure may evoke soul-crushing sorrow, self-doubt, and abject despair that would mentally disintegrate the mind of a mortal. It is this pursuit, however, that allows the production of miraculous works of art, music, technology that are equally mesmerizing and mortifying. Every Aeldari carries this darkness in their soul, and all have the opportunity and choice. Do they give in to temptation, bringing low their civilization, or conquer this in the path to a new direction, if not just of survival, but, potentially, a new age for the Aeldari people? Fueled by the Infinity Circuit, the Wraithbone was a distillation of the skein, an amalgam of hope and despair. The songs of the artisans encompassed joy and woe. The Wraithbone was glowing with its own chill light, its future shape appearing as a fluttering image on the edge of vision, molecule by molecule emerging from its potential to fulfill its destiny. The song changed. The light coalesced, forming matter, forming Wraithbone. Some among the Aeldari foresaw the coming calamity, whether their psychic providence or more mundane intuition. Those among the Craftworlds survive still. Known as the Asuriani, or Craftworld Aeldari, they exist as a fragment of the perfection of a once unrivaled peoples. A Craftworld is a colossal fusion of technology, splendor, and art that only the Aeldari could hope to create. These vast vessels are created of and formed by Wraithbone and interposed against the void of space, glimmer akin to the passing of a shooting celestial body. Made of many domes, the Aeldari may look out into the vast abyss while their internal lumens glow within, coursing through the arterial structure of the ship and its transparent surfaces. Equal parts grown and manufactured, a Craftworld is wrought from the psychoactive Wraithbone. It is a composite material of various elements, ores and minerals, which extends akin to a skeleton through the length of the Voidcraft. Aeldari smiths known as Bone Singers psychically forge and mold Wraithbone, manufacturing great works into various forms they require. There is no greater feat of Aeldari craftsmanship than the Craftworlds. Craftworlds are self-sufficient, at least continent-sized superstructures, which are independent realms with distinct culture, technologies, and governance. While they may differ greatly in form, size, and internal geography, they all possess several critical pieces of infrastructure. These include the webway portal housed in the heart of the superstructure for protection, the halls of forging, where bone singers mentally grow and craft Aeldari weapons of war, and the dome of crystal seers, where a serene forest of scintillating sculptures lie. All once a mighty Aeldari psyker or hero in life, now a remembrance in death. Barracks, armories, and training facilities all are present. It is the Infinity Circuit that is the most preternatural and integral element of any craft world. Akin to a psychic lattice throughout the Voidcraft, it runs from and through the vessel's Wraithbone core and is the lifeblood of the craft. critical to the function of the Voidcraft. All systems require its presence to function. Upon the death of any Aeldari, their souls lie vulnerable to the predations of She Who Thirsts. To prevent their consumption, the Asuryani utilize spirit stones. As much jewel, waystone, and heirloom, these psychoactive crystals are worn by all living Asuryani in order to capture their soul at the moment of death, robbing She Who Thirsts of further Aeldari souls. When filled with a soul, these waystones become a spirit stone and can be collected by fellow warriors, so that the protected soul may be returned to the Infinity Circuit. When flowing throughout the circuit, spirit seers allow communication between the living and those souls within the circuit. This allows their knowledge and guidance to continue and protects their twilight essence from the horrors of the warp. Craftworlds travel through the abyss of space, often at sublight speeds, though they do routinely possess warp travel capability. Due to their psychic nature, their souls radiate as a beacon for the demons of the warp, and so prefer the safety of the webway. Whilst the craft is often too large to traverse the webway itself, smaller allied craft or warriors may travel throughout and within. The webway and its labyrinthian passages exist interposed between real space and the immaterium. Created by the Old Ones and its technologies taught to the Aeldari, it exists to allow safe and rapid passage throughout the galaxy whilst avoiding the dangers of warp travel. Whether it be demonic incursions, mental degradation, or temporal distortion, the webway excludes travelers from these horrors whilst allowing rapid ingress and egress. Its pathways may lead to and from Craftworlds, lush worlds of the Aeldari Exodites, and many thousand other locations throughout the known galaxy. Webway gates, due to their psychically malleable nature, can take many forms, but are commonly formed from wraithbone arches, projecting a portal big enough for Aeldari warriors, constructs, or vehicles to pass through. Some may be even larger, allowing, if suspended in the vacuum of space, entire fleets, or potentially even a craft world, to pass through and travel through the passages of the webway itself. In the 41st and 42nd millennium, however, the webway, though it still connects to many Aeldari places of civilization, the fall of the Aeldari and the birth of Slaanesh ruptured several of its hyperspatial pathways, with the Great Rift further damaging its physical and psychic integrity. This has allowed demonic excursions along its path. Whilst this poses danger in its travel, it is an essential hyperspatial highway, and the heightened danger of the warp to the Aeldari necessitates its use to traverse great distances, albeit not without its own adverse conditions. Inquisitor's Log. Designation: Ordo Xenos. Subject: the webway. I inquired with the custodes in this past solar year. Never in my time have I felt more dysphoric and propitious in equal measure. He spoke with such clarity, as if the millennia of moral, spiritual, and physical decay wrought by the passing of the Emperor to the throne and that of the imperial truth held no sway. We spoke of the Emperor's grand plan to use the Aeldari webway in his bid to preserve the Imperium and its tragic failure. This webway, with its protection from the great enemy, showed that humanity was on the verge of apotheosis, laid low by hubris and corruption. I wonder what the Aeldari would think of his plan, their webway. But it does sound like via this project, the Emperor does in fact protect. The weapon responded before he was consciously aware of the threat. The shuriken catapult hummed, its internal gravitic chambers aligning in perfect synchrony with his thoughts. There was no recoil, no clumsy mechanical action, merely the sensation of intent fulfilled as monomolecular discs slice through the air where his enemy would be. Bonesingers are the chief artisans of the Aeldari people. They use their psychic powers to forge and mold wraithbone and other psychoactive techno-organic materials into various items, from tools to pieces of art and weapons of war. They stimulate and shape these materials, may fix broken armor, weapons, vehicles, or even craft worlds. Aeldari weapons, armor, and vehicles are activated by the psychic signature of their people, rather than physical control. Shuriken weapons store a solid core of plasticrystal, and a series of psychically induced high-energy impulses originate at the aft of the weapon and pass through the weapon at breakneck speed. Each psychic impulse shears off a monomolecular aspect of the ammunition to allow it to fly through the barrel at supersonic speeds, shredding hostile infantry. Lasblasters are similar to those wielded by the human forces of the Imperium. However, they are more refined, less prone to failure, and due to their psychic connection, are more accurate. They enable mobility and have a higher rate of fire. Fusion guns are akin to melter weaponry and, upon contact with hostile organics, cause the molecular structure to vibrate intensely, generating heat and bursting the target into flare, then molten slag. Flamers release refined fuel which carries an adhesive quality. This fuel ignites upon leaving the weapon and is particularly devastating to organic foes. Death spinners project a monofilament wire which applies a magnetic containment field to spool and expand the wire in a spiral and expanding fashion. Those foes within the thread's arc are carved like sinew as the wire arcs around, effortlessly cutting through flesh and material alike. Heavy weaponry, such as Reaper launchers, fire small missiles of differing types with a rapid barrage from safe distances. At close quarters, chainswords are used with an artisanal quality and psychically balances their wielder's physical strength. They slice through foes effortlessly and, in the Aeldari, allow swift and lethal strikes. Wraith constructs may seem like sorcery to lesser races, but are no less lethal. From the anti-grav jet bike, which are of such quality that they can traverse a battlefield in mere moments, all the while strafing targets with shuriken catapults and las cannons, to the grav tanks with their anti-gravitic motors, which seem to bend the laws of the known physical universe. They field psychoplastic hulls with the added protection of hollow fields and spirit stones, lending resilience in the throes of combat. At other times, they may for short periods take flight, then unleash a torrent of fire, whether it be the fire prism with its prismatic laser, or doomweavers which may use high-grade monofilament projectors similar to the death spinner, slicing through, ensnaring or shredding entire battalions into paste. Warwalkers, bipedal war machines, may field a combination of heavy weapons. Used for rapid reconnaissance, may rapidly flank and target enemy formations, and deploy a power field, which alters the visual outline of the vehicle and shields its pilot from enemy fire. Many in the Imperium see the technology stolen from the recesses of the Mechanicus with void shields. Us in the Inquisition know this to be fiction, but whether we correct that misassumption is often not worth the cries of heresy it would announce. This field turns incoming weapon fire aside, protecting the nimble craft. Vol's Wrath, operated by a pair of Aeldari warriors, are artillery pieces, which may utilize monofilament wire, or the devastating vibro cannons which emit sonic waves that oscillate to disrupt the physical frequency of their foes. They may also utilize cannons which warp reality into a rift, tearing foes apart at the molecular level before being deposited into the warp. A Wraith construct is piloted by an Aeldari soul, pulled at a time of need from the Infinity Circuit. They exist simultaneously in the realm of the living and dead and experience these battles while being in an altered perception. Many within the Imperium would point out the induced state is similar to a dream. Living Aeldari will exist as psychic echoes of energy, but due to this, cannot focus and experience reality to the level of the living. This may affect their accuracy and understanding at times, though are no less deadly. Spirit Seers, Aeldari Psychers, capable of communion with souls within the circuit, are therefore necessary to interlay with these souls in order to enable their full potential. From the smallest Wraith Guard to the mighty Wraith Knights, all wield terrifying arcane weaponry and psychic resilience. The largest, known as Wraith Knights, are magnificent war machines, operated by both a living Aeldari and a soul from the Infinity Circuit. Operated by twins due to their psychic connection, these colossal war machines utilize soul-crushing weapons. Most commonly, the mighty wraith cannons. They orchestrate the deposition of warp rifts, which act to tear apart even the largest foes. Alternatively, they may wield sun cannons, which fire searing plasma exchanges, or even ghost glaives and scatter shield in order to take to melee with the largest demons of the Immaterium. Many were our gods before the fall. The names of some have fallen into obscurity, whilst others still shape the lives of our people. They are honoured in many ways, and the tales of their deeds and lineage vary greatly between Asuryani and Exodite, and even between the Craftworlds themselves. Yet, there are those gods whose resonance is still felt. First of them all was Asurion, the Phoenix King, once the greatest of our gods and the divine master to whose will all, even Cain, bowed. Wisdom and introspection were his gifts to the mortal Aeldari. He is the preserver, revered by seers of all kinds, and we Asuryani take from him our name as a sign of our respect. Cain, the Lord of Murder, from whom we Aeldari were granted anger and skill at arms. With these gifts, we defend what is ours and smite those who seek to spin our doom. Yet anger unbound is as much a curse as a boon. Rage is embraced fully only by the reckless and brings naught but doom to those who fall into its fiery embrace. Though shattered in his duel with She Who Thirsts, fragments of Cain remain lodged within each of our Craftworlds, the last vestiges of his terrible might. Isha the Mother, god of the harvest, fertility and nature, and her lover Kurnus began the first of the Aeldari, Eldanesh. From her tears, cried out of love for her mortal son, the first life blossomed, and we Aeldari were born. To the Mother, we owe thanks for the gift of love, without which our existence would be hollow. Kurnus the Hunter, father of Eldanesh, was the god of the hunt. He, just as Isha, bore great love for his mortal children. This love would be his doom, for in their actions, Isha and Kurnus would break Asurion's trust, and in doing so, spell the doom of his mortal son. From bold Kurnus we gained desire, a gift that allowed the Aeldari to advance and prosper while cursing us with avarice. It was Foul Shu, often seen with Kurnus, who bestowed upon us the gift of flight, harnessed now by the swooping hawks, among others. Liliath, the maiden, daughter of Isha, and god of dreams and fortune. She imparted to us joy, which is its own reward, and the impetuousness of youth, which must be tempered with experience and discipline. She is closely associated with the maiden worlds, as they symbolize her purity and beauty. Vaul, the master smith and the creator, god of craft and industry and uncle of Kurnus and Isha. He gave us our inventiveness, and in doing so, encouraged us to expand our minds. The attributes granted to us by the Creator allow our artisans and bone singers to forge wondrous creations, from the glittering structures, imposing statues and sparkling forests that sprout from the Craftworld's wraithbone core, to fortress-shattering engines of Vaul, capable of obliterating our enemies. Morai Heg, the crone, mistress of fate. She was the god of fate and mother of the banshees. She bestowed upon the Aeldari the gift and curse of foresight. Upon the death of the Aeldari Empire, those worlds our people called home, and that were consumed by the Eye of Terror, became known as Crone Worlds, for they were lasting remnants of the greatest doom ever to have befallen the Aeldari. Segarash, the laughing god. From this trickster deity, we were gifted irony, which allowed us to find humor in ourselves and, by doing so, avoid the trap of hubris. It is said that Segarash still lives, having fled into the webway upon the birth of She Who Thirsts. The laughing god is the patron deity of the Harlequins, and they continue to do his bidding, and to teach unto our people the lessons of the fall. Hoek, the wanderer. He was the god of exploration and travelers, and one with the webway. The name of Hoke is still revered by the outcasts, particularly pathfinders, who are forever lost upon their chosen path. Anak Yith, the weaver, the mother of spiders, who once watched over us from her cosmic web. It was she who created the warp spiders who even now protect the Infinity Circuit from the intrusions of the great enemy. Then there is Inead, the whispering god, the unborn god of the dead, who, it is prophesied, shall rise only when the last Aeldari is slain and spell doom for she who thirsts. He is the patron deity of the Inari, those who seek to bring about his resurrection. The Aeldari may believe that their gods no longer walk amongst mortals, defeated and destroyed by the chaos god Slaanesh. Nonetheless, the Aeldari sing tales, legends, and feats of times long past where these gods walked amongst them. They hope to act by their noble principles, to perhaps see their return in the coming times. The brother gods of Asuryan, Cain and Vol, are thought to be the supreme deities amongst the Pantheon, whilst Vol as creator and Cain as destroyer are in opposition. Asuryan preserves the balance. Kurnus, Hoek, and Segorach equally represent the body, mind, and soul. Lilith, Isha, and Morai Heg represent femininity. Finally, Inead. The whispering god will bring about the destruction of Slaanesh at the end times of the Aeldari peoples. Whilst the Aeldari gods lie dormant, defeated, or dead, the avatar of Cain exists as an ember of the bloody-handed god's wrath. Deep within a Craftworld lies the Wraithbone Vault Chamber. This chamber is sealed behind gigantic bronze gates. Within the chamber, upon a fireborn throne, lies the iron frame of the Avatar. This titanic frame, encrusted with the signs of war, age, and entropy, is adorned with runes, gemstones, metallic inlay. The eyes, when dormant, lie as black as the void. The throne is woven into the Craftworld and interlaced with the Wraithbone core. The Craftworld and the Avatar are as one, psychically connected. When the Asuryani peoples muster for war, the chamber will pulsate with the aggression, lust, and fury of war. The Avatar will glow ever increasingly as molten slag flows through the metallic arteries around its form as the Avatar hums and hisses as the forge. Even the void black eyes may start to show an emblematic glow. As the Craftworld battles, the fury and ferocity of the Avatar resonates through the Craftworld. Both the Asuryani and the Avatar feeding off one another. The exarchs of the aspect shrines may don their ceremonial attire and armor and move toward the gilded sanctum. If the coming battle is dire or critical to the continued survival of its people, the ritual of awakening will be performed. This ritual, heralded by a psychic roar, will reverberate through the Craftworld, and the young king will be brought forth, an aspect warrior fit for this purpose. The young king will stride naked into the chamber aside from a crown of thorns with the doors pulled shut. Their chamber will hiss, hum, and roar with the ritual, and at its end, and with a psychic echo, the Avatar of Cain will march forth. Inquisitor's Log. Designation: Ordo Xenos. Subject: the Resurrection. There were moments within my inquisitorial career where I thought the coming of a Primarch was a tale of myth and legend. The Master of the 13th, Guilliman, proved that living legends do still walk amongst us. What has not been touted by those fools within the ecclesiarchy is that this apotheosis was the amalgamation of the desire of this Xenos Ivrain and her long-wrought bid to awaken their own god of death. My fellow Inquisitors may be lithe to cautiously observe this cult, but the coming of an Aeldari death god can only spell calamity. But what is not clear is at which force would this foretell weal or woe. I continue in my works and observations. What is obvious is that these Xenos still have a larger role to play, and we within the Inquisition must be ready to answer. In desperation, Calgar raised his bolters and prepared to fire at the Eldar Witch. But Ivrain's blade fell lightning fast, hacking through the cabling that fed power to Guilliman's stasis field. Energies flared, and from within the closing arms of the auto-reliquary, Calgar heard a rattling sigh that would haunt him until his dying day. "What have you done?" he roared, despair and fury blazing through him like a firestorm. Fists clenched, Calgar turned upon the traitors that had forced this terrible tragedy to come to pass and waded back into the fight with unstoppable fury. The auto-reliquary engulfed Robert Guilliman and his throne entirely. Runic designators and auto-lumen flickering in mesmerizing patterns across its surface. As though spurred by the sight, the Black Legionnaires redoubled the intensity of their attack. The foremost Black Legionnaires were mere yards away from the foot of Guilliman's throne when the rune panels on Call's auto-reliquary flickered from red to green. A single chime sounded, a clear, pure note that cut through the clangor like a knife. The Archmagos himself, fighting back-to-back with the Inari and Chief Librarian Tegurius, emitted an uncharacteristic blurt of Binharic triumph. The next moment, the outstretched armatures of the auto-reliquary folded back with a gaseous hiss to reveal a sight of breathtaking splendor. Where before Robert Guilliman had sat, a pale, stasis-locked revenant, now the Primarch stood awake, alert, and very much alive. His presence was immense, dominant as a thunderhead suddenly filling the shrine with its crushing pressure. Guilliman was clad in a magnificent new suit of armor, an ornate masterwork that had traveled all the way from the forges of Mars within Call's auto-reliquary. In one hand, the Ultramarines Primarch held the blade of the Emperor, lit now from hilt to tip with leaping flames, and in his eyes was a look of such murderous intensity that even the loyalists within the shrine quailed to see it. It was as though a spell had settled over the shrine. Though outside the din of war thundered on, within that echoing chamber, friend and foe alike stared awestruck at the legendary figure reborn in their midst. An incoherent scream of rage shattered the silence. A single Khorne berserker charging headlong through the stunned combatants to launch himself in a flying leap at the Primarch. Guilliman moved with such blistering speed that the Inari themselves would have struggled to match it. His burning blade drew a pyrotechnic arc through the air as it swung, bisecting the Khorne berserker at the waist and hurling his severed halves to the ground. As the Chaos Worshipper's armored corpse crashed to the floor, the spell was broken. With a great howl of hate, the Black Legion warriors surged towards Robert Guilliman. Wordlessly, the noble demigod strode to meet them, and the carnage truly began. First to die was the sorcerer, whose powers had shaken the temple to its foundations. Guilliman raised his mighty gauntlet, the Hand of Dominion, and a storm of armor-piercing fire erupted from beneath it to rip the tainted Psyker to pieces. Next to fall were the remaining Black Legion berserkers. Following their comrades' example, they flung themselves screaming at the reborn Primarch. Like their fellow, they were reduced to so much armored meat, smashed from the air with terrifying speed. Guilliman was running now, storming forward through the hail of bolts and shells unleashed by the Black Legionnaires. Rounds exploded against the Primarch's armor, but none could pierce its inviolable plates. As he crashed into the front ranks of Black Legionnaires, Guilliman let out a building roar of pure, undiluted fury. The Primarch's first blow threw a Black Legionnaire high into the air, blood streaming behind the corpse in a red trail. His second strike smashed a traitor Terminator into a bronze and marble column with enough force to drive the Chaos Worshipper clean through it and out the other side. A spiked power fist swung for Guilliman's chest, only to be lopped from its wielder's arm before the blow could land. Guilliman's return swing parted his attacker's head from his shoulders, cauterizing the stump of the traitor's neck as the body crumpled to the floor. On it went, the Primarch moving with such speed that even the heretic's superhuman reactions couldn't save them. None could match Guilliman, none could even come close, and the few opponents that landed, lucky blows, found their weapons turned aside by the Primarch's masterwork armor. Tegurius released a thunderous barrage of psychic energies, thumping tectonic shockwaves, that hurled heretic Astartes from their feet and shattered their armor like porcelain. The chief librarian felt Guilliman's gaze upon him then, for just a heartbeat. The Primarch's appraising stare seemed to strip Tigurius down to his soul. Then, Guilliman stormed on through the enemy ranks. With every blow, the Primarch of the Ultramarines sent mutated corpses tumbling through the air. His expression was graven granite and frozen hate, a mask of vengeful anger that had endured millennia. And at the battle's end, he met with the Asuriani. There was a windowless tower that nevertheless promised the finest of views, if one only knew how to see them. Beneath the soaring cone of the ceiling, a lithe figure in black armor and a crescent-shaped helm floated cross-legged in mid-air. He was lit by a shaft of light that began nowhere and orbited by an interweaving pattern of spinning runes. Robut Guilliman met with the one he had called, one of the most powerful beings at large in the galaxy. "Greetings, Eldrad Ulthran, Farseer of the Aeldari," said Guilliman. He spoke in the tongue of Ulthran's people of Ulthwé. "And to you, son of the Emperor of Mankind, my ally and my enemy. Enemy I sometimes am to your people, and so I am grateful that you have come," said Guilliman. The tower room was well furnished, including a number of chairs. All were far too small for his bulk, and so he remained standing. "I expended a great deal of effort in bringing you back to life," said Ulthran distantly. His attention was not wholly on the encounter. "I would be foolish not to heed your call if you are to fulfill your purpose. All men require guidance from time to time, and for all your father's art, you are mostly a man." "What is the purpose you have in mind for me?" asked Guilliman. "That is not the question you came to ask, but I will answer it anyway. The task you must fulfill is the one you appointed yourself, that of the savior of humanity." Ulthran looked down. "If it would not be offensive to suggest," he said, switching to Imperial Gothic, "I would prefer to conduct this conversation in your language. You are one of the very few sons of Terra who can speak our tongue at all. You do so very well, but there are certain subtleties you do not manage perfectly, and it grates upon my ears." "I apologize for my lack of expertise," said Guilliman. "Not at all," said Ulthran, staring ahead again. "The fault is yours, of course, but one day you will master it. Virtually none of your species, no matter how mighty, ever could nor ever will." He caught a rune from the air, examined it, and set it in motion again. The rustle of his robes was loud in the city's immemorial silences. "I can feel your discomfort at this new era," Eldrad said. His Gothic was accented in a way that imbued the language with fresh beauty. "I sense your pain. You have a great burden to bear, almost as great as mine. You and I both have seen all we hold dear cast down by folly, and are pained by the misery of what took its place. We are kindred spirits, in a way. Ask your question. I will answer as a favor, in recognition of our shared sorrows. There is a further thing you have not said." "Is there?" asked Guilliman. "You wish to be free of the influence of my kind," Eldrad said, his voice fading with his body. "You see the armor as a jailer holding you hostage to our whims. Know this, the fates of humanity and Aeldari are bound together. Either both species will survive, or neither will. Your Emperor understands this. There are greater enemies than the primordial annihilator. In the times to come, you will see. The struggle is only beginning. The old war returns." Ulthran was an outline, a shadow. Remember this conversation, and reconsider carefully on the day realization comes whether you wish to stand alone. Eldrad Ulthran was gone, but the weight of his message lay heavy on the thought of the Primarch. Once the Aeldari ruled the stars. They achieved mastery of time, space, and every other dimension. Now, they are a fractured people, brought low by their own hubris.